Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Patrick Perspective. I want to thank you all for joining me on today. As you know, this is Black History Month, and I have promised that I will be dealing with Black history, dealing with Black icons, giving us a different perspective on that. And so I want to thank you all for joining me. I also want to thank you all for supporting me. There are those of you that have shared and liked my videos. I really appreciate it. If you've subscribed to my YouTube, I appreciate that as well. And those of you that give donations, as you know, in order for me to do something like this and to keep this going, I have to have a base of supporters that support me and support my messages. So if I add value to you and add value, um, just to the conversation, regarding faith, culture, and politics, I ask that you consider being a donor and donating to the Patrick Perspective or any other of the projects that I have going on. Thank you again so much. Now, as we go into Black History Month, I want to kind of give you a little background of where all of this came about. Many of you that have been following me for a long time, you know that whenever Black History Month rolls around, I like to give a unique perspective when it comes to Black history because I believe, and I said this in our last episode, that if we focus too much on the pain of the past, we will never be able to move forward. And I think a lot of times what we see in our culture is a focus on the pain and the wrong that was done to the Black community and never really talk about those successes and how we move forward. And so one of the things that I'm going to do today, I want to expose what the real agenda of Black Lives Matter, because the truth of the matter is a lot of people don't really understand where Black Lives Matter came from, what's their message, what's their mission, and where they're going. And I think a lot of times we really do ourselves a disservice because we don't research and we don't find out where these organizations came from and who run them and who fund them. And so today I'm just going to take a few moments to kind of give you a rundown or kind of a history of where Black Lives Matter started. So if you are ready to go along with me, please again like and share this video with your friends so they can get this information as well. Now, when it comes to Black Lives Matter, you have to you can't just start in 2012. You have to really go back into the 1960s, even into the early 1900s to find out where this movement kind of got its roots. So when you go back, you'll actually realize that there's always been two paths for the Black community. All right. There's been two ways forward after slavery. And if you look at the picture that's on the top, you will see W.E.B. Du Bois and you'll see Booker T. Washington. Now, these were two Black men that had two different paths of success for the Black community. W.E.B. Du Bois believed that if we were to go back and go back to Africa, if there was a movement for us to go back to our origin, back to Africa, that would help Americans become successful. And a lot of times that is not true. You can see W.E.B. Du Bois and some of the things that he did. A lot of people labeled him as crazy, and some of his ideas were crazy. But if you look at his movement, you see nothing really ever came of W.E.B. Du Bois and the Back to Africa movement. It was good for people to talk about. It was good for people to, wear afros and all of that stuff and say, okay, we're going back, but nothing ever came of it. But when you look at Booker T. Washington, there's a very different thing that happened with Booker T. Washington. Booker T. Washington believed that if we worked hard, if we learned a trade, if we rooted our future in the American dream, that the Black community could become successful. Now, when you look at the work of Booker T. Washington, you will see that Booker T. Washington was able to start a whole university on things like this. So that was really a blessing to see Booker T. Washington start a university, to see Booker T. Washington move forward, to see Booker T. Washington really wanting people to have work ethic, the black community to have work ethic and pick themselves up by the bootstraps, which people hate saying, but it's the truth, and move forward that way after slavery. And Booker T. Washington was a conservative, he was a Republican. All right. And so these ideas is what really helped move the black community forward. But again, there was always two paths. So you had half or a portion of the black community that believed in W.E.B. Du Bois, that believed that they could never be successful here in America, and believed that we needed to go back to Africa, back to our roots. And then you had another group that believed if we worked hard, got a great education, learned a trade, that we could be very successful in America. And so to this day, those two paths are still at war in the black community. Now, these also manifest as well with Martin Luther King and Malcolm X. Martin Luther King had a message of peace, okay, of nonviolence, that if we took a nonviolent approach, we would appeal to the American conscience. So he took a nonviolent, peaceful approach. Malcolm X had a by any means necessary approach. And he actually said, you know, by any means necessary should we gain our freedom. And that included violence. So you had a peaceful message with Martin Luther King, then you had kind of a no justice, no peace message from Malcolm X. So today, that brings us to today. After Martin Luther King was killed, okay, the peaceful, nonviolent message kind of went under wraps, even with the preachers, because most of the preachers that marched with Martin Luther King after he was assassinated, they were very scared. They ran back into their churches, and we haven't seen many of the black pastors since because they were afraid for their lives, afraid of being killed. So that message kind of have been in the four walls of the church, but out in the streets, Malcolm X message has been reverberating through the black community. And so these two paths are still there. And so today, when we see Black Lives Matter, when we see Antifa and a lot of these movements, when we see these violent movements, these violent protests, and when we see the looting and all of that stuff, it is rooted in these two paths that have been at war in the black community. Black Lives Matter have the no justice, no peace message. And they believe, and it's sad that they're actually getting ready to be, they were actually nominated for a Nobel Peace Prize after we've watched in 2020 all summer, watched them loot and riot and attack business owners and stores to steal tennis shoes and things of that nature. And so I want you all to understand when it comes to Black Lives Matter, which sect it's coming from. It is not coming from the Martin Luther King nonviolent movement. They are coming mostly from the W.E.B. Du Bois. That's the Malcolm X, no justice, no peace. That's where they're coming from. So let me tell you how they got their start. Now, this is very interesting. Many of you may know this. Many of you may not know this. But these are the founders of Black Lives Matter. And when you look at this picture, you may notice that many of them are, or all of them are women. That is very important to understand because they are actually rooted and grounded in a feminist movement. Okay? They're rooted and grounded in a feminist movement. So they actually got their start and their birth during the Trayvon Martin case. Okay? Many of you may remember in 2012, Trayvon Martin was killed by a neighborhood watchman named George Zimmerman. And out of all of that, you know, and if you followed the trial, you will understand that a lot of the things that was put in the media about the Zimmerman case was not true. When you go back and you study the whole thing, you'll find out that Trayvon was high on that night, that Trayvon had been sent to stay with his father because of his, he was robbing cars at school. He was skipping school. He was a very troubled teenager. His mother literally sent him off to his father because she couldn't deal with him anymore. So Trayvon is in Sanford, Florida, and his father had no house in Sanford. He was staying with another young lady, an area where Trayvon didn't really know about. But when you look at Trayvon's life, and I may do a video just to kind of really research and understand Trayvon and Michael Brown's life because they are very similar, had some of the same things happen in their family. And you'll realize that, their family dynamic actually kind of led to their deaths in the way they responded to authority. So this is basically where it was birthed in this Zimmerman case. And so the media really blew it up. And so once Zimmerman was acquitted, this is where Black Lives Matter really took off and got its start with these three young ladies. First of all, this is the young lady. She was the first person to use the words Black Lives Matter. She was the first person to use the actual words Black Lives Matter. All right. Her name is Alicia Garza. It's very important. If you want to research her, you can go and see her background. I'll talk a little bit about it today. This is the young lady that actually created the BLM hashtag for Twitter. Her name is Patrisse Cullors. Now, all of these ladies were not connected in the beginning. It just kind of organically grew on Twitter and online and on social media. So she created the hashtag. The other girl used the language Black Lives Matter. And then this is the young lady. Her name is Opie Tometi. And she created the website blacklivesmatter.com. Now, it's very important. Again, these are all women. One of the things that you will notice about the Black Lives Matter movement is that it is led by women because those women are feminists and they believe that they are the ones that should be leading these movements. They believe that Malcolm X failed, Martin Luther King failed, all of the men, W.E.B. Du Bois, Booker T. Washington were all failures and failed the black woman. So they are now taking control and they are leading this movement. That's why you see a lot of feminist beliefs within the movement. And I'll talk about that a little later. Now, it's very important to note that these three women created this organization, but Black Lives Matter is not and was never an official organization or charity. Okay. They were actually just a project that was funded by a group called Three Currents. All right. A group called Three Currents actually kind of brought them under their umbrella and used them as a project to fund. And so foundations would fund Black Lives Matter through this Three Currents organization. Now, let's look at some of the funding and where they get their funding from. All right, some of the funders include the W.K. Kellogg Foundation, the MacArthur Foundation. You have the Packard Foundation. You have the Global Fund. Now, ask yourself, what does a global fund has to do with Black Lives Matter? What does globalism and people all over the world, why do they want to support Black Lives Matter? And I'm going to explain that a little later. But they had a lot of funders, and the Novo Libra Foundation, and in 2020, they actually raised $300 million. Yes, you heard that right. They raised $300 million from these different organizations and foundations. So you got to ask yourself, why is there so much funding for Black Lives Matter? Why is there so much funding? What is it that they're funding? And so you'll also find out that if you go to Black Lives Matter's page, their website, you will actually notice that when you decide to give to Black Lives Matter, you're not actually giving to that organization because they're not really an official organization. But when you hit the donate button, it actually goes to this Act Blue, which is a transaction portal for the DNC, the Democrat Party. So when you're giving, when these people are giving to Black Lives Matter and they're giving to, this organization or these foundations are giving to this, it is actually going to Act Blue, which is a transaction company. Okay. They are a transaction company for the Democrat Party. I tried to blow this up for you so you can actually see the URL from going to their website, clicking donate, and it went to Act Blue. Now, this may have changed since the election is over now, but that's why you saw the Black Lives Matter come up very, very strong during election season. They came out very strong during election season because the goal was to get a Democrat elected. Now, once Joe Biden was fraudulently elected, once he was elected, they wanted to meet with him. And Joe Biden didn't want to have anything to do with him. He still haven't met with them because they served their purpose. And the purpose was to create mass chaos in a lot of these cities during election. Okay. So they've used them and they've thrown them away. And a lot of the Black Lives Matter people are actually upset with the Democrat Party because of that, because they raised a lot of money for the Democrat Party. So when you think of Black Lives Matter, see, they use Trayvon Martin, they use Michael Brown, and they use the death of these young black men as a catalyst for their own agenda, their own feminist agenda, their own political agenda. It was never about black lives or black young men being killed by the police. That was just a means to an end. That's why you never hear Black Lives Matter talk about abortion, which is the number one cause of death in the black community. All right. There's over 25 million black babies that have been killed, but you never hear them talk about abortion. You never hear them talk about black on black crime or young black men killing other black men. They will never talk about those things. Why? Because it's not about Black Lives Matter. It's about feminism, and it's about raising money for the Democrat Party to support their agenda. That's simply what it is. Now, when it comes to Black Lives Matter, and we talked about the funders, the truth of the matter is the real issue in the black community is father absence. Okay? Father absence is the real issue. But what Black Lives Matter want you to believe, they want you to believe that the number one problem in America and in the black community is white privilege, different levels of oppression, and this intersectionality that goes on. Now, let me explain this. What Black Lives Matter has been able to do, they have been able to make everyone a racist without having any factual evidence of racism. Okay? This is basically what they're doing. They have found a way to create eternal victims and monetize racism without actual racists. And I really want you all to hone in on that. How can you have all of these racists without actual acts of racism? Because if we look at our history, we know that in the 1950s and 60s, there was more racism then, and our families were more intact during that time with all of that racism in the South. But now, all of a sudden, our families are worse, and they're claiming that the racism is worse. And this is a trick of the enemy. This is the lie of Black Lives Matter. And actually, Booker T. Washington made a statement, and it explains why Black Lives Matter is doing this. And he made this statement a long time ago. He says, there is a certain class of race problem solvers who don't want the patient to get well because as long as the disease holds out, they have an easy medium through which to make themselves prominent before the public. And so basically, what he was saying is that people have now monetized the grievance of Black people. Black Lives Matter is one of those organizations that have figured out a way to make $300 million by claiming that all these people are racist without any racism or racist acts that they can document. That is the whole goal. And as long as people buy into that lie that all white people are privileged, all white people are racist, as long as we continue to buy into that lie, they can continue to monetize their movement until people like you and I expose what they're really doing. Okay? Are there real racists out there? Yes, there are real racists out there that want to destroy people that are not their ethnicity. But those racists, what I call them, is that they're haters. There are people that are full of hate. And that means there are Black people that hate white people that want them eradicated. There are white people that hate Black people and want them eradicated. The truth of the matter is, we're all brown. And you've heard me say this before. But because we polarized ourselves into these two polar opposites, calling ourselves Black, calling ourselves white, and continuing to fight each other, the enemy is able to use that, all right, to keep us at each other's throat. Black Lives Matter is simply monetizing it, okay? So they'll use a police officer, a white police officer that kills a Black young man to stoke anger, to stoke fear, and to stoke this lie of racism. You cannot find where Zimmerman was a racist. You cannot find the officer Darren Wilson that killed Michael Brown. You can't find anywhere where he was a racist. Even with the latest George Floyd case, the tragic case, all of them are tragic. But you can't find any evidence that there was racism involved or race played a role. Okay? But what you can find evidence of is similar activity between all three of those men. Similar criminal activity between all three of those men, Black men. And so I'm not here, and I know a lot of people, there are trolls that'll be watching this that's going to come on and say things. I'm not here to argue that. All right. I know the truth. I've researched all of the cases. I know the truth about the behavior. And that's the problem in the Black community. We refuse to address the behavior that's happening among our culture and in our communities. And because we refuse to address the behavior and continue to blame white people and blame white privilege and blame all of these different things, we never address our problems. And 4 years go by and we're still dealing with the exact same things. Okay? So Black Lives Matter is simply monetizing. They're monetizing the race problem, but they have to continue to create race problems every 6 months, every year or so, especially during election year, in order to monetize themselves. Now, what's the real issue? And I don't want to be a person that's on YouTube or on Facebook or on any of these platforms that give you the problem and never give you a solution. The real issue in the Black community, and let me show it to you. These are father facts. The Journal of Research on Adolescence confirms that even after controlling for varying levels of household income, kids in father-absent homes are more likely to end up in jail. And kids who never had a father in the house are most likely to wind up behind bars. Let me say that again. The issue in the Black community is father absence. Okay. There are so many of our boys that are being raised by single mothers that's doing the best that they can. But the truth of the matter is, it was never designed for the family to end up where 73% of our homes are single mothers. That is simply the issue. So, what Black Lives Matter could do, they could be promoting, they could be promoting the family, fathers in the home, child support reform, doing whatever they can to really help Black lives. But they don't do this. Why don't they do this? Why don't they address father absent home? I'm going to show you something, because when you go, actually now they've actually taken it down off of their website because they caught a lot of flack for it, because people like me have been exposing it. But on their website, this is what they used to have on their website. And I want you all to really pay attention to this. On their website, they actually say on their website that they intend to disrupt the Western prescribed nuclear family structure. That's the part that's highlighted. You can barely see it there. But this was on their website. They have since taken it down. But this was one of their guiding principles, that their guiding principle is to disrupt the family structure in the Black community. What does that mean? Remember, I told you, these women are feminists. They have actually admitted to being trained Marxists. And that means that they don't believe in the patriarchal system that America promotes. That means a father being in the home with the mother and the children. They believe that women are designed to lead the family and rule over men. How can you have a Black Lives Matter organization that says that they support Black lives, but they don't support men being in the homes of, or being in the lives of their children and in the homes of their children? This is why this movement is so dangerous. Hear me. This movement is dangerous because it seeks to disrupt the family structure. The number one issue in the Black community is the breakdown of the family. Here's an organization that wants to disrupt that. This is why Black Lives Matter is very, very dangerous. So you say, well, what can we do? What can we do about this? Just think about it for a second. For Blacks, even during slavery, when marriage for slave was illegal, Black children were more likely than today to be raised by both their mothers and fathers. Economist Walter Williams, the late Walter Williams, has written that according to census data from 1890 to 1940, a Black child was more likely to grow up with married parents than a white child. Did you hear that? During that time, 1890 to 1940, it was more likely. That was when racism and slavery was at its height. All right, and people coming out of slavery was at its height. Our families were more intact during that time than it is today. And we know the history of how that happened through LBJ, Great Society policies and things like that. But think about that. So what we have to do as conservatives, as Christians, we have to figure out this father absence problem. We have to do it without fighting each other. We have to figure out a way to get fathers back in the lives of children so children can flourish. That it's as simple as that. So what I want to submit to you today, again, I'm not going to be one of these YouTubers or talking heads on social media that don't have solutions and don't come up with solutions. I have come up with solutions to issues as it regards to the black inner city and the urban core of America. Um, these are the issues. How do we push back against Black Lives Matter? We address father absence. We address the literacy rates, and we address jobs. It is as simple as that. We address father absence, literacy rates, and jobs. How do we do this? We all have to become mentors in some type of way. We all have to support not just programs, because it's really not programs that change people. It's really people that help transform lives. People do that. People like you that's watching me right now. Yes, you can get involved. I believe conservatives are too afraid to get involved, and conservatives actually hurt themselves um, by not getting involved. I want to create a place where conservatives can actually get involved with the urban core in America. I want you to think about this for a second. Think about this. What if conservatives led the way on bridging the gap between urban communities and law enforcement? What if we led the way on that? I think that would be amazing if conservatives actually led the way on bridging the gap between urban communities and police. Believe it or not, these boys that never grew up with a father do not understand the law, nor do they understand protocol or parental authority. They simply don't understand it. They don't know it. That's why many of us will look at things that happen on the side of the road and we'll say, well, why did they do that? Why did they get out of the car? Why did they reach for a gun? Why did they go in their glove department? The reason is because they never had a man to teach them how to act on the side of the road. I want to help young men understand how to do that. And we can do that with media. We can do that by making videos like this. We can do that together. All right. You can help impact lives that don't have fathers. You just have to commit yourself to do it. Okay. So, what if not only if we help bridge the gap, what if conservatives and Christians led the way on literacy and education reforms in the urban community? What if we were the loudest voices? What if we were the loudest voices speaking up about school choice, speaking up about ESAs, educational savings account, where the money will be given to the parent and not to the system, but given to the parent for the parent to choose what's best for their child? What if Christians led the way in education reform? It can happen. It can be done. You can do it. You can do it. You can support this. All right. You can actually get out and get involved in some organization to make it happen instead of sitting back on social media and complaining about it. Black Lives Matter, they get out into the streets and they get involved. They manipulate, but they actually go and engage people in these areas. Last one. What if Christians and conservatives led the way on work ethic and workforce development in urban communities? What if we help these young black men obtain their first job when they turn 16 years old, and we therefore are putting money in their hand before the gang gets to them? This is what I am proposing that we do to fight back against Black Lives Matter. I have decided that I'm going to spend the rest of my years pushing back against the lie that all white people are racist and that all white people have privilege. And the way I'm going to do this is that I am going to go into the urban core and develop solutions, partner with organizations and churches, develop solutions that will revitalize the urban community. That's why I am introducing you today for the first time my brand new nonprofit organization designed to be duplicated all over America in urban communities in the urban core. And that organization is called CURE. I live in Chattanooga, Tennessee. And CURE stands for Center for Urban Regeneration and Education. Now, we ultimately know that the ultimate cure is Christ Jesus, and Jesus coming into the heart of someone and transforming their heart. That is a supernatural work of God that we can't do as humans. We can't regenerate someone's heart. Only God can do that. But what we can do is that we can educate people and we can explain to people why they are in poverty and how the economic system works and how job development works, how literacy impacts their future, how their behavior on the side of the road can impact their future. As Christians, as conservatives, we can actually do this. We have the cure, which is Jesus. But then us getting involved and helping in these urban communities is what's going to change them forever. So I'm inviting you all to go to my new organization called Cure. You can go to the website. It is www.curechattanooga.org, and you can help out by donating to Cure. You can help me get started. I had to get a tax exempt. I had to pay all of that stuff out of my pocket to get a tax exempt to start the organization, to start the website. And I'm asking for you to partner with me to get this done. If I can prove that it can be done in Chattanooga, Tennessee, that means it can be done in Charlotte. It can be done in Atlanta. It can be done in Philadelphia. It can be done in Houston. Christian conservatives going in, teaching young boys how to act on the side of the road, training parents on conflict resolution skills. All right, letting them understand what the law says, what can you do on the side of the road, and what can't you do. Guess what this will do? This will save the lives of those young black men that don't have a father. We step in and become a father by creating videos, by showing them how a police goes through their cycle and their protocols when they're on the side of the road, why they flash the light, why they walk up on the side of the car, why they look at your hands, why they want you to make eye contact, why they don't want you to go into the dashboard. Boys and young ladies need to know this. But if they don't have fathers and they don't have mentors like you and like me to teach them these things, they will never know. We can save the lives of police officers that get into altercations that end up with them losing their lives. We can save the lives of young boys that just simply don't know what to do, like Tamir Rice, running around the park with a toy gun, not understanding by taking the orange cap off. He has now opened himself to a world of trouble. They are no longer with us, but we can go in and we can help them, not manipulate them like Black Lives Matter, just to monetize off of them, but actually go in to impact them so that they can impact their families. We can cure this nation. We can cure Chattanooga, and your city can be cured as well. So I'm asking you, go to the website, join in, help us fight back against Black Lives Matter. I appreciate each and every one of you listening to this edition and episode of The Patrick Perspective. Like and share this video. I will be coming back with more information like this, and I will be even breaking down the lives of a lot of the young men that have been killed so that it doesn't happen again, so that it doesn't happen to your child, it doesn't happen to my boys, that we all get educated and learn how to fight back. Thank you so much for joining me, and I will see you on the next episode of The Patrick Perspective. God bless you.